There's nothing we love quite as much as butter, but homemade butter is so much better. And this recipe is shockingly easy and earns you serious bragging rights. We're adding to our Go Big Sister series, arming you with the tools and techniques you need to create connection and tradition in the kitchen in a way that only food can. And no one boosts our kitchen confidence like Heather Smith of Orson, Gygi. Hi, friend.
Hi.
So good to see you.
So good to be here.
All right, so why would we want to make our own butter?
Because why not?
We always love homemade.
Absolutely.
Homemade anything is just that much better.
Absolutely. I think there's a couple things. Number one, it's a fun thing to introduce to family. So if you've got something you can do for your kids to get involved, this is so fun and easy for them to be a part of it. Also, I know sometimes you probably don't deal with this, but some people buy a quart of cream and then they're like, what am I going to do with my recipe? Only needed a pint, or I only need a couple cups. So then you're left with a little bit of cream and you're like, what am I going to do with it? So this is a fun way to be able to use the rest of the cream that you bought and then just make some butter, because then it prolongs the life.
Okay, so what do we need to make butter?
Cream.
Wait, really? That's it?
That's it. That's it. And I wanted to, you and I both love the Dairy Gold high fat.
Yes.
Cream that is not always available to everyone, and so I went to the grocery store and got the very basic, just heavy cream that, because I wanted to show how easy and how accessible.
Well, and there's a difference in fat, right?
Yes.
And so that's why some brands do have that higher fat, but most grocery stores are probably a little bit less.
Yes, and you can make butter with just regular milk. You could do it with half and half. It will make it less creamy. So the fat in your cream is going to make it creamy. So of course, we want it as fatty as possible, because when we're talking about butter, we want it creamy and delicious. And so all you need is heavy cream. Now, then once you start, so you can do it a couple ways. I have the old-fashioned churner here. If you want to start churning,
I was going to say, do I have to have one of these?
You do not have to have this. You can literally make butter in a mason jar. Put a lid on it and shake it and give the kids a job, and it will eventually get there. Obviously, in a mixer, it's going to go a little faster.
So this is just cream?
This is just cream in here, and I've got just cream in here. So when you've gone to mix your heavy cream to make whipped cream or something like that, we've all gone past the point where we're like, I walked away from it and I've overwhipped it. This is basically where we're at right now in our mixer.
So it's kind of curdled looking. If we got a close-up of that, it's not smooth anymore.
No.
It looks curdled. So that we can't use as whipped cream anymore.
No, and it gets to the point where it almost looks like scrambled eggs, right? You kind of get to that point and you're like, so usually when we're baking, that's when we're like, okay, I'm gonna toss it out, I'm gonna throw it away.
Yes.
We don't have to do that. We will allow our mixer to then mix it. Now there's a couple other, I was looking online because what else could we use to make cream? Or butter. You can make it in a blender, you can make it in a food processor. The difference though is that when you make it in those types of things, you're incorporating a lot more moisture. And so we've learned from cake experiences that extra moisture in our butter will affect our baked goods, it will affect our buttercreams, it will affect things. And so if you make it in a food processor or a blender, it is incorporating more of the buttermilk into it. And so it's adding...
Why, because it's sealed?
Well, because it's blending it. It's emulsifying all of the buttermilk into this. So you can see now we're starting to get to a point.
And you're kind of on a lowish speed. This isn't too high, right?
And I'm gonna actually turn it down because this is where it starts to get a little fun and sloshy. And if you overfill your, there's not really a recipe here, because I just tell people don't go more than halfway in your bowl. Because you'll notice that it starts sloshing around.
Right, we have the liquid now coming out.
And that's really, you just made butter. So now you just created buttermilk and your butter solids.
Okay.
Now the buttermilk that we have here is different than what you would normally bake with, because it's not the acidic levels. And so oftentimes when we're adding buttermilk to our cakes or whatever, we're needing that to activate our baking soda. So you could add a little bit of lemon juice to this to make it acidic, and then you could.
So we could make our own buttermilk with that.
But don't throw that away. You can still use that in recipes. Just replace, if you were making pancakes or something, put that in there. It's not gonna be...
I love how we're reusing. We're being resourceful with the things that we have. So when we get to this point, you've got us here next.
So
what are we gonna be doing with this?
This is kind of what you're gonna look like. It's gonna be in your beaters. And then here's your... This takes a second to kind of get out. So this is what we have here. So now I've just got my strainer, and I'm gonna separate my butter fats from the buttermilk. And then to preserve your butter, And this is a mistake I used to not do, and you can kind of hop online and see mixed reviews of this, but from what I can see, this is the best way to do this, is you want to then rinse your butter. Now at home, I just ran it in my strainer with cold water.
Okay, so put it in the sink and run the water, okay.
But because we want to get as much of that buttermilk out of this, because the buttermilk is what's in there that's going to make this rancid.
Oh.
And so what we want to do is then just kind of knead it in our bowl of water. Now you'll see it got really cloudy really fast. That tells me that there's buttermilk still in
So
my
now
butter.
you're kind of squeezing it and like pushing it out.
And so then,
now, when you say it gets kind of rancid if there's too much butter, like how long will this like store for in our fridge?
In our fridge, once homemade butter will last about 2 to 3 weeks. I have never had it last that long.
Okay,
once
you're just going through it.
But you can freeze it after. So, so say if you're like, there was a really great deal on cream and you're like, great, let's go buy butter because it's going to be, or make butter because it's going to be cheaper than buying it. And so from here, what I would do is now change my water.
Okay,
and then rinse
water
it until I knead it in there and the water's clear.
So it goes pretty quick. There's a couple steps afterwards. Tell me really quick, because we're out of time, and you're gonna squeeze the water out a little bit more. We'll save it with parchment. But are we swapping this for any butter in any recipe or no?
Because you can't control the moisture content, you may have to play with it a little bit because, like, again, I'm not a factory where I'm like, okay, get every bit of buttermilk out of there. But if it's not something, I think in any cooking recipe, absolutely.
Okay.
When it's chemistry, baking
might be a little different.
You may be a little tricky. But again, this makes such a great gift. So I wrap it in parchment and send it, and people love it.
All right, where can we find more of this? Not so much the recipe, but the instructions and learning more about homemade butter. Where are we gonna find
we'll have it all on our blog, gygiblog.com, and then just message us on Instagram. We're happy to help.
You guys have all the good stuff, all the information. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.